She lived in a small, quiet neighborhood where the streets were lined with trees that swayed gently in the wind. Her house was modest but warm, with flowers planted along the front walkway and a small garden that she cared for with pride. It was the kind of place where neighbors waved to each other in passing, and the days moved at a slower, peaceful pace. On the surface, everything seemed calm, but anyone who thought they knew her would be mistaken. Her life was simple, but it was hers. She woke up early every morning, usually before the sun had fully risen. The first thing she did was feed her dog, a large, loyal companion who had been with her for years. The dog was more than just a pet. It was a partner in her life, always alert, always watching, and always protective. Its fur was dark and shiny, and its eyes carried a deep intelligence that often surprised people. The bond between them was strong, built on years of trust, shared walks, quiet evenings, and a mutual understanding that each of them had the other's back. After feeding her dog, she would go through her morning routine with practiced efficiency. She liked to start the day with a cup of tea while sitting in her small kitchen, looking out the window at the garden. The flowers were just starting to bloom this time of year, and the sun's early rays cast a golden light across the leaves and petals. It was a small pleasure, but one she never took for granted. Life had taught her to notice these quiet moments, to find comfort in the ordinary, and to appreciate the peace that surrounded her home. Work was part of her life too, though she never let it consume her. She held a steady job at a local office, and while the work could be tiring, she approached it with diligence and focus. She was known by her coworkers as reliable and intelligent, someone who could handle pressure without losing her composure. It was the same calm, collected strength she carried into every part of her life. People who met her often underestimated her at first, seeing only her quiet demeanor. But those who truly knew her understood that she was far stronger and more capable than appearances suggested. Evenings were her favorite time of day. After work, she would return home, change into comfortable clothes, and spend time with her dog. They would walk through the neighborhood streets slowly, enjoying the sounds of the evening, the distant laughter of children playing, the occasional bark of another dog, the rustling of leaves in the trees. These walks were simple, but they grounded her. They reminded her of who she was and what she valued: peace, routine, and the companionship of her loyal dog. Neighbors knew her as friendly and kind. She would often stop to chat with someone walking by or help carry groceries for an elderly neighbor. People trusted her because she was straightforward and dependable. Yet while she was open and kind, she was also wary. Life had taught her that not everyone had good intentions. She was careful who she let into her life and watched closely for signs of trouble. That vigilance had become second nature, a quiet awareness that ran just beneath the surface of her daily routines. Unknown to her neighbors, she had a past that had shaped her into the person she was today. She had faced challenges that required courage, resilience, and intelligence. She had learned to stand her ground and protect herself in ways most people never had to. These experiences were not something she boasted about, but they were part of her strength. She moved through the world with a quiet confidence that came from knowing she could handle more than most imagined. And her dog, attuned to her energy, mirrored that confidence, ready to act whenever needed. It was in this calm and steady life that the trouble began to approach. Across the neighborhood, a local gang had been operating. They were reckless and fueled by prejudice, targeting homes based on assumptions rather than facts. They thought they could take what they wanted without consequences. To them, her house seemed like an easy mark. They saw a woman who lived alone and assumed weakness. They did not know her. They did not know the loyalty, intelligence, or courage that existed behind the doors of that modest home. One evening, as she prepared for bed, she noticed a feeling she could not quite explain. It was subtle at first, a tiny prickling at the back of her neck, a sense that something was off. Her dog sensed it too, pacing slightly, ears perked, eyes focused on the window. She trusted that instinct. Over the years, she had learned that sometimes the smallest feelings of unease could be the most important. She walked around her house, making sure the doors were locked, checking the windows and glancing at the garden. Everything appeared normal, but the tension in the air felt real. The gang, unaware of her awareness, continued their preparations. They planned their move carefully, thinking they were being clever. They spoke in whispers, confident that their targets would be unprepared. They were wrong. They did not know that this woman had faced difficult situations before. They did not know that she had trained herself and her dog to handle threats. They did not understand the bond between them, the way they communicated silently, understanding each other's movements and moods. That night, she settled into bed with her dog at her side. The house was quiet, but her senses were alert. She thought about her neighbors, her work, her garden, and the life she had built. She also thought about the strength she carried within her. She knew she was capable of defending her home, though she hoped it would not come to that. The dog rested its head on her lap, a silent promise that whatever happened, they would face it together. Outside, the gang moved closer, their confidence growing with each step. They did not hear the subtle clicks of the locks she had double-checked, the soft footsteps of a woman who was ready for trouble, or the low warning growl of a dog who had been trained to protect. The night was theirs, or so they thought. They could not have imagined the chaos that awaited them, the unexpected resistance that would turn their plan upside down. As she drifted toward sleep, she reflected on the life she had built and the peace she cherished. She was proud of her independence and the home she had worked hard to create. She was proud of her dog, whose loyalty and intelligence were unmatched. She trusted that together they could face anything. The night outside was dark and the streets were quiet, but she felt ready. She had learned long ago that strength was not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it was quiet, steady, and waiting patiently for the right moment to act. And in that quiet house on that calm street, the stage was set. The woman and her dog were ready, even if the world outside did not know it yet. Trouble was coming, but it would meet something it had not expected. Courage, loyalty, and a force that could not be underestimated. The night might be dark, but inside her home, the light of awareness and preparedness shone brightly, casting long shadows across the garden, over the flowers, and into the hearts of those who would soon learn a lesson they would not forget. The night was still, with only the faint sound of leaves rustling in the wind. The streetlights cast a pale yellow glow over the quiet neighborhood. Most of the houses were dark, with their occupants asleep, unaware of what was about to unfold. Across the street, a group of men huddled together, whispering and moving cautiously. They believed the night was theirs and that the house they had targeted would be an easy prize. Their confidence was thick, almost tangible, but it was built on assumptions and ignorance. They thought the woman inside was just another quiet resident, someone who would not resist. They were wrong. The gang had spent weeks planning their move. They had watched the house from a distance, noting the comings and goings, the times when lights were dimmed and the moments when the woman left for work. They had convinced themselves that their knowledge gave them an advantage. They did not notice the careful routines, the subtle checks she had put in place, or the way her dog moved and observed every sound in the night. They saw a house, they saw a figure inside, and they imagined weakness. In their minds, the outcome was already decided. But reality has a way of surprising those who underestimate it. As the gang approached the side of the house, they moved silently, crouching behind bushes and low walls. They carried tools for breaking locks and opening windows, believing their actions were unseen. Each step they took was careful, calculated, but it did not account for one crucial factor: the instincts of the woman and her dog. The dog, lying near the back door, perked its ears and lifted its head at the sound of unfamiliar movement. Its body stiffened, muscles taut, eyes alert. It let out a low, almost inaudible growl, a warning that something was not right. The woman, still awake, noticed the subtle change in her dog's behavior. She had trained herself to listen to these signals. They were often the first sign of danger. She rose slowly, careful not to make a sound that could give her position away. She moved toward the window, peering through the blinds without drawing attention. Outside, she could see shadowy figures moving near the garden, their shapes unfamiliar and suspicious. She did not panic. Panic was useless. Instead, she observed, calculating her options, ready to act if necessary. Her mind raced through possibilities, thinking about escape routes, calling for help, and how to use her dog as a protective force. Every part of her training and experience came into play, guiding her decisions. The gang reached the side window. One of them knelt and began prying at the frame, confident that the lock would give way under their effort. They whispered to each other, sharing jokes and mocking what they thought was an empty house. They did not hear the faint click as the dog shifted position, ready to respond. They did not notice the woman's calm breathing and focused eyes watching every movement. The tension was building, though they remained oblivious to it. wrapped in their false sense of security. Suddenly, a sharp bark echoed through the night. It was not loud or uncontrolled, but carried a force that could not be ignored. The dog had made its presence known, issuing a clear warning. The men froze, exchanging glances. One laughed nervously, brushing it off as just a pet-making noise. But the woman knew better. The dog's bark was not a casual sound. It was a signal of readiness and alertness, a sign that the home they thought was defenseless was anything but. She kept her hands still, waiting for the moment when the gang would make their next move. The man at the window tried again, pushing harder. The frame creaked and the window began to shift slightly. Another bark, sharper this time, made him flinch. The dog was moving closer, its body tense, every muscle prepared for action. The woman stayed in the shadows, a quiet presence, her eyes fixed on the intruders. She could feel her heart rate quicken, not out of fear but from the anticipation of what was about to happen. She had faced challenges before, and this was just another test of her calm and resolve. The gang finally managed to open the window slightly. One of them leaned in, reaching for whatever valuables they assumed were inside. That was when the dog sprang. It lunged forward with a force that startled the intruder, teeth bared and growl deep and commanding. The man stumbled back, tripping over the garden hose, landing hard on the ground. The others froze in shock, their laughter and confidence evaporating instantly. The dog had exceeded their expectations, and they were realizing far too late that this was not a simple house to rob. The woman acted quickly. She shouted loud enough to assert her presence, but controlled, commanding attention. "Get out of my yard!" Her voice was firm, unwavering. The gang hesitated, confused and panicked. They had assumed they could enter silently, that no one was awake. Now they faced a human and a dog fully aware and ready to defend themselves. Fear began to set in and their movements became erratic. They whispered frantically, trying to figure out what to do, but the decision-making that had seemed so easy under confidence was now clouded by shock and danger. The dog did not relent. It moved between the intruders and its owner, keeping them at bay, its growl never ceasing, its stance unyielding. Every time a hand reached toward the window again, the dog reacted with precision, snapping and barking, ensuring the gang could not get close. Its loyalty was evident, its understanding of its owner's needs absolute. The woman watched, calm but ready to act further if necessary. She had trained herself to remain composed under pressure, and that composure gave her a clear mind and steady hands, even as adrenaline coursed through her veins. The gang's panic grew. One of them tried to climb through the window, but the dog's sudden movement forced him to retreat. Another attempted to grab a tool, but in their fear they dropped it. The woman realized she needed to escalate the situation carefully. She picked up her phone, keeping it low and hidden, and dialed the local police, explaining the situation quietly but quickly. She remained in control, guiding her dog with subtle gestures and commands, ready to intervene if the intruders made any sudden moves. The coordination between her and her dog was seamless, the result of years of trust and shared understanding. Minutes stretched as the gang tried to regroup. They whispered urgently, now aware that this house was not like the others they had targeted. Their assumptions about easy targets, their confidence based on prejudice, were collapsing. Every attempt to push forward was met with resistance, every movement countered by the woman and her dog. The tension in the air was thick, palpable, as they realized that what they thought would be a simple crime had turned into a dangerous situation. The night, once quiet and still, was now alive with movement, growls, and sharp commands. Finally, a distant sound of sirens broke through the tension. The gang froze, their panic reaching its peak. They had not planned for this, had not considered the possibility of intervention from law enforcement. They exchanged panicked glances, their movements becoming erratic and desperate. The dog, sensing their fear, maintained its position, keeping the intruders at bay until the authorities arrived. The woman remained steady, her presence commanding, her confidence unwavering. She knew the moment of confrontation had passed, but the need for vigilance had not. As the sirens grew louder, the gang made a hasty retreat. They ran into the darkness, stumbling over uneven ground, leaving behind tools and evidence of their failed attempt. The woman and her dog remained alert until the police reached the property. They explained everything, pointing out the items left behind and recounting the gang's movements. The officers were impressed, noting the courage and preparedness of both the woman and her dog. The narrative of the night began to take shape, a story not of fear but of strength, intelligence, and loyalty. When the immediate danger had passed, the woman sat on the porch steps, the dog by her side, both of them calm now but still watchful. She reflected on what had happened, feeling a mix of relief and pride. Relief that no one was hurt, that the dog had protected them both, and that her quick thinking had made a difference. Pride in knowing that her awareness, training, and the bond with her dog had turned a potential disaster into a story of empowerment. The neighborhood, once quiet and ordinary, had witnessed a remarkable display of courage and loyalty, though most people would only hear about it later. In the aftermath, she returned inside, checking the locks, ensuring the house was secure, and settling her dog comfortably for the night. The bond between them had been reinforced, a reminder of the trust and mutual understanding that had saved them. The night had tested them, and they had passed with resilience and grace. Outside, the streets returned to their quiet state, but the house held the echoes of the night's events, a reminder that strength often lies in unexpected forms and that loyalty, when true, can change the course of events in ways no one anticipates. The woman finally allowed herself to rest, knowing that she had faced the threat with courage and intelligence. The dog curled up at her feet, still alert but relaxed, embodying the loyalty and protection that had made all the difference. The night was over, but its lessons would linger, not just for her, but for anyone who might underestimate the quiet strength of those who live with awareness, courage, and unshakable loyalty. The night felt heavier after the initial confrontation, charged with the lingering tension of the attempted break-in. The streets, which had been quiet and calm just hours earlier, now seemed alive with unseen danger, though most neighbors remained asleep, unaware of what had almost occurred. Inside the house, the woman and her dog were both alert, senses sharpened by the events. The dog lay low but watchful, ears twitching at every distant sound. Its loyalty and instinct were undeniable, but it also waited for her signal. Together, they had survived the first encounter, but the real test was just beginning. Outside, the gang was regrouping. Their confidence had been shattered by the unexpected resistance. They muttered to one another, voices tight with panic and frustration. Some wanted to retreat entirely, but others, driven by ego and anger, insisted they should try again. They did not yet understand that the house they had targeted was not a place of weakness. They did not know that their assumptions based on prejudice had led them into a situation they were completely unprepared for. Every plan they made now was rushed, reckless, and doomed to fail. The woman moved quietly to the living room, her dog close at her side. She had already thought through multiple scenarios, anticipating the possibility that they might return. She checked the windows and doors once more, making sure everything was secure. Then she considered her next steps. She knew that simply waiting could provoke another attack if the gang decided to strike again. She needed to assert control, to show them that they were not welcome and could not operate without consequence. Her mind worked quickly, weighing options for defense, communication, and strategy. She had learned over the years that preparation and foresight were as important as courage in moments like these. Meanwhile, the gang's tension grew. One man, emboldened despite the earlier failure, suggested they circle around to the back again. They believed that if they surprised the house from another angle, they could succeed. They were wrong. They had already underestimated the bond between the woman and her dog, the sharpness of her mind, and the careful measures she had put in place. As they approached, the dog noticed them immediately. Its body stiffened, tail low but rigid, eyes locking onto the intruders. A growl rumbled from deep in its chest, warning them that they were walking into a trap far different from the one they imagined. The woman saw the movement outside and whispered a soft command to her dog. They had trained together for moments like this in small ways, building an unspoken language that allowed them to communicate without sound. The dog's ears twitched, its body moving with precision, ready to respond instantly. She moved behind a sturdy piece of furniture, staying hidden but prepared. She knew that she had the advantage, the element of surprise, and that her calm, calculated approach could turn the situation entirely in her favor. The gang, now in the backyard, began attempting to climb the fence. They believed stealth would help them, but every step was observed. The dog reacted immediately, barking sharply, a sound filled with authority and warning. The intruders froze, looking around in confusion. Their eyes met the shadows, catching glimpses of movement that unsettled them. They were no longer in control. The woman's presence, though unseen, was palpable, Her calm strength radiated through the house, and the dog's loyalty reinforced the message. They did not belong here, and any attempt to enter would be met with consequences. Frustrated, one of the men tried to climb the fence thinking he could reach the house unnoticed. The dog leapt forward with perfect timing, intercepting him before he could get halfway. The man stumbled backward, nearly falling onto the ground. The other members shouted, panic spreading through the group. They had thought they were the hunters, but now they were the ones being confronted. Their confidence had evaporated, replaced with fear and confusion. Every instinct told them to retreat, yet some stubbornly hesitated, unwilling to fully admit defeat. The woman remained quiet, her focus unbroken. She knew that she had to maintain control of the situation. Her dog's actions were precise and deliberate, but she also needed to guide it, to ensure that the intruders could not find an opening. She moved lightly, checking locks and doors, making subtle adjustments to create obstacles that would slow them down if they tried again. Every decision was intentional, a mix of instinct, experience, and careful thinking. She understood that patience was just as critical as action. Acting too soon could provoke a dangerous escalation, while inaction could give the intruders an opportunity. She had learned the value of timing in life, and it was proving essential now. The gang, growing desperate, tried to throw stones and objects toward the house to scare the dog and distract her. The dog reacted instantly, moving to intercept, keeping itself between the house and the intruders. It barked and growled with controlled aggression, ensuring they understood the risk of continuing. The woman watched carefully, ready to escalate if needed, but still calm. She had faced difficult situations before, and this was another test of her vigilance and skill. She could see the panic and uncertainty in the intruders' movements. They were beginning to make mistakes, and she was ready to capitalize on them. As the minutes stretched, the woman's nerves remained steady. She could feel adrenaline, but it did not cloud her judgment. She knew that her dog's loyalty and training gave her a unique advantage. They were partners in defense, each reinforcing the other's presence. The intruders, blinded by fear and arrogance, did not yet realize the coordination and intelligence they faced. Every attempt they made to approach the house was met with resistance. Every movement countered by the combined vigilance of woman and dog. One of the men, trying to intimidate, shouted threats, thinking that loud words would make the woman retreat. It had the opposite effect. Her calm voice responded, firm and unwavering, cutting through the darkness. Leave now, or you will regret it. Her confidence, combined with the dog's protective stance, made the intruders pause. Fear replaced arrogance. They realized that their assumptions had been false. This was no ordinary home, and they were no longer in control. Their plan, once simple, had dissolved into chaos and uncertainty. The dog continued to move strategically, not attacking recklessly, but keeping a barrier between the intruders and its owner. Its loyalty and intelligence were evident, a living shield that amplified the woman's authority. The intruders' attempts to intimidate or manipulate had failed. Every instinct they relied on, their perception of weakness, the assumption that fear would be easy to instill, was useless against a coordinated, vigilant pair. The woman's calm demeanor and the dog's decisive actions had turned the situation completely around. The hunters had become the hunted in spirit, even before any physical intervention by law enforcement. Finally, one of the intruders tried to reach a back door, thinking it might be unlocked. The dog intercepted with precise timing, snapping and growling, forcing him to retreat immediately. Panic spread through the group and their coordination crumbled. They had assumed control, but now chaos ruled their actions. Shouts turned into hurried instructions, and attempts to regroup were met with hesitation and fear. They were facing consequences they had not anticipated, consequences born from courage, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty. The woman maintained her focus. She knew the critical moment had passed, but she also understood the importance of remaining vigilant. The gang was retreating slowly, unsure of where to go or how to react. She could see the confusion in their eyes, the dawning realization that this house was not theirs to conquer. She did not celebrate or taunt. She stayed calm, watching every movement, guiding her dog, and preparing for the arrival of help. Her measured response ensured that the intruders could not regroup or strike again easily. They had learned the cost of underestimating her. Moments later, distant sounds of sirens reached the neighborhood. The intruders, now desperate, realized that they had no time to continue. They fled, stumbling through the darkness, leaving behind their tools and any hope of completing their plan. The dog remained alert, eyes tracking their movement until they were safely out of range. The woman let out a quiet breath, relief washing over her, but she did not let it weaken her vigilance. She had faced danger and come out stronger, but she knew that careful observation and preparedness would always remain necessary. When the authorities arrived, the woman explained everything, describing the intruder's movements and the role her dog had played in the defense. The officers were impressed, noting the courage and skill displayed by both the woman and her loyal companion. Evidence of the attempted break-in was gathered, and the intruder's retreat made it clear that they had been thoroughly discouraged. What could have been a traumatic and dangerous night had instead become a story of courage, loyalty, and the effectiveness of preparation. Sitting afterward on the porch, her dog curled beside her, she reflected on the night's events. The tension in her body eased slowly, replaced by a sense of accomplishment and gratitude. Her mind wandered to the years that had built this moment, the training, the careful attention to routines, the bond with her dog, and the awareness that had guided every decision. She had faced threats and danger before, but this night had confirmed something essential, that intelligence, calmness, and loyalty could be more powerful than assumptions, force, or arrogance. The neighborhood returned to its quiet rhythm, but the house now held a story of courage and vigilance. Inside, the woman and her dog rested, still watchful but confident. They had faced danger directly, and the outcome reinforced the trust and connection that defined their relationship. The night was far from over in the larger sense. The world could always bring new challenges. But this encounter had shown the value of readiness, patience, and the quiet strength that comes from experience and loyalty. Through it all, the woman knew one truth clearly. Appearances could deceive, assumptions could fail, and those who underestimated others could face consequences they had never imagined. And her dog, loyal as ever, was proof that true partnership, courage, and protection could change the course of events in the most unexpected ways. Together they had weathered the storm, and together they would face whatever came next with the same calm, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty. The night had deepened, and the tension in the air felt almost physical. The street outside, which had seemed quiet before, now carried the echoes of chaos from the attempted break-in. The gang had not given up entirely. Their panic had slowed them, but in their minds a plan for retaliation was forming. They believed they could find another way, approach from a different side, and finally get what they thought they wanted. They still underestimated the woman and her dog, unaware of the careful measures, intelligence, and preparation that had already thwarted their first attempt. Inside the house, the woman remained alert. Her eyes scanned the darkness outside, her ears tuned to every sound. Her dog moved alongside her, muscles coiled and ready, eyes glinting in the dim light. They had faced the first challenge successfully, but the night was not over. She knew that vigilance now was more important than ever. Any misstep could give the gang an opening. Calmly, she moved through the rooms, checking doors and windows once again, silently instructing her dog where to position itself. Their coordination was seamless, the result of years of trust and shared experiences. Outside, the gang had circled around the property, trying to find a blind spot or weakness. Their voices were low, tense, and full of frustration. One of them, the boldest of the group, whispered about forcing a door or breaking a window, convinced that persistence would pay off. They did not understand the advantage the woman held. Every action she had taken, every precaution she had implemented was designed to counter exactly this kind of situation. And with her dog as her protector, the balance of power had already shifted away from the intruders. The first sign that the gang had miscalculated came almost immediately. As one of them approached the side gate, the dog intercepted without hesitation. Its bark was sharp and commanding, echoing through the yard with a force that left no doubt about its intentions. The man stumbled back, tripping over the uneven ground, and the rest of the gang froze. They could see the dog now, fully alert and ready to defend its owner. Fear began to take root, replacing the confidence that had driven their plan. They realized they had underestimated not just the woman, but also the fierce loyalty and intelligence of her dog. The woman remained calm, but her mind raced with strategy. She knew that allowing the gang to linger only increased the risk. They were desperate and unpredictable, and desperation could lead to violence. She moved to a position where she could see both the front and side of the house, her dog at her side, ready to act. She kept her voice steady and commanding, issuing warnings to anyone who dared to come closer. Her presence alone was enough to make the gang hesitate. They had assumed the house would be an easy target, but now they faced a level of resistance they had never expected. The gang attempted to regroup, whispering urgent instructions to each other. They tried to act confident, but the tremor in their movements betrayed their fear. One of them threw a small object toward the porch, hoping to distract the dog or intimidate the woman. The dog reacted instantly, intercepting the object mid-air and growling so low and fierce that the intruders flinched. The woman's calm and deliberate movements guided the dog, ensuring that their defense remained coordinated. Every motion they made was calculated, purposeful, and precise, leaving no room for error. The gang's frustration grew. They had never encountered such resistance, never realized that the very assumptions they had made about easy targets were completely false. Their anger began to cloud their judgment, making their movements erratic and exposing them to the woman's careful observation. She could see the fear creeping into their expressions, the hesitation in their steps, and the chaos that was slowly dismantling their confidence. Her dog mirrored her focus, moving with precision, positioning itself to block any path they might try to take. At one point, a man attempted to force open a back door. The dog lunged instantly, teeth bared, growling with controlled intensity. The man recoiled, stumbling backward and losing his balance. The other gang members shouted, urging him to continue, but their words were filled with panic and uncertainty. They had become disoriented, realizing that the house was defended far beyond their expectations. Every approach, every attempt at intimidation, was countered with precision. The woman and her dog were no longer reacting. They were controlling the situation entirely. The woman knew that she needed to keep the intruders from regaining any sense of control. She moved through the house strategically, positioning herself where she could observe and respond to any new movements. Her dog followed her lead, remaining vigilant, alert, and ready to intervene. Together, they created an invisible barrier that the gang could not breach. The night's events had become a test not only of courage, but also of intelligence, patience, and coordination. The intruders had assumed they were clever, but their lack of awareness had led them directly into a trap of their own making. The gang, now fully panicked, attempted to retreat and reassess. But the woman anticipated this. She moved to the front door, making herself visible in the porch light, her posture firm, her voice calm but commanding. "Leave now and no one gets hurt," she said. The words carried authority, reinforced by the dog standing protectively by her side. The intruders hesitated. Their retreat had not been guaranteed. The woman's presence and her dog's loyalty created a psychological barrier as powerful as any physical one. Fear, caution, and the realization of underestimation began to dominate the gang's minds. As the police sirens grew louder in the distance, the gang's panic reached its peak. They began to scatter, trying to escape in different directions. One tripped over a garden hose. Another stumbled on the uneven ground, leaving behind tools and evidence of their attempted crime. The woman's calm vigilance had ensured that they could not regroup or mount another attack. Her intelligence, patience, and preparedness had turned a potentially dangerous night into a decisive display of control and resilience. The dog remained alert, eyes tracking the fleeing intruders, ensuring that they were completely deterred before finally relaxing its stance slightly. The authorities arrived moments later, lights flashing and voices calling out. The woman explained the events calmly and clearly, detailing the intruders' movements and the role her dog had played in defending the house. The officers were impressed, noting the courage and composure displayed by both the woman and her loyal companion. They took statements, gathered evidence, and ensured the area was secure. The intruders' retreat left no doubt about the outcome. The night had been turned around completely, a clear lesson for anyone who underestimated the determination and resourcefulness of the woman inside that house. After the police left, the woman returned to the living room, her dog settling close beside her. She let out a long breath, relief and pride mingling in her chest. The adrenaline that had carried her through the night began to ebb, replaced by a deep sense of satisfaction. She had faced danger directly and had remained composed throughout. Her dog, ever loyal, had acted with precision and courage, reinforcing the bond that had carried them both through countless challenges. Together, they had ensured that the intruders would never forget the lesson they had learned, that underestimation can have consequences far beyond what one imagines. The night slowly returned to calm. Outside, the streetlights cast their pale glow, the neighborhood quiet once more. Inside, the woman reflected on the events, thinking about how quickly assumptions can lead to mistakes. The gang had entered her life expecting ease, only to be met with strategy, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty. The dog's actions had not been instinct alone. They had been guided by years of trust and careful training, an extension of her own awareness and skill. It was a partnership in the truest sense, a living demonstration of how preparation and courage can transform vulnerability into strength. She moved through her home, checking once more to ensure that everything was secure. Her dog followed closely, vigilant but calm. The experience had reinforced lessons she already knew: the importance of observation, the power of patience, and the strength that comes from loyalty and preparedness. The night had been intense, but it had also been affirming. She knew that she had the ability to face challenges, to protect herself and those she cared for, and to turn moments of danger into demonstrations of resilience and intelligence. In the quiet aftermath, the woman sat on the porch, her dog at her side, watching the first hints of dawn light the horizon. The events of the night had left a lasting impression, not just on her, but on the intruders who had fled and the officers who had witnessed the aftermath. It was a story of courage, loyalty, and strategy, a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and that strength is often found where it is least expected. Her calm intelligence and the dog's fierce loyalty had combined to create a force that the gang could not overcome. The woman allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought about the life she had built, the careful routines she maintained, and the bond she shared with her dog. These were not just tools for safety. They were expressions of her values, her awareness, and her resilience. The night had tested her, and she had passed, reinforcing the understanding that courage and loyalty, when paired with intelligence and preparation, can overcome fear and chaos. The dog, loyal as ever, rested its head on her lap, a silent reminder of the partnership that had made all the difference. As the morning light spread across the neighborhood, the woman felt a renewed sense of confidence. She had faced an unexpected threat with clarity, courage, and patience. Her dog had proven itself not just as a protector, but as a partner in the truest sense. Together, they had transformed a dangerous situation into a story of triumph, demonstrating the power of preparation, loyalty, and calm resolve. The gang had learned a lesson they would not forget, but more importantly, the woman had confirmed to herself the strength and resilience she carried within, a strength that would guide her through any challenge yet to come. The morning sun rose slowly over the quiet neighborhood, casting warm light across the streets and homes. Birds sang softly in the trees, and a gentle breeze rustled through the leaves. It was a peaceful scene, almost ordinary, but for the woman and her dog, the memory of the night before lingered, vivid and intense. Though the immediate danger had passed, the events had left a mark on her mind, reminding her of both the fragility of calm and the strength she carried within. She woke early, even though sleep had been restless. Her dog, ever vigilant, was already awake, sitting close to her bed, eyes scanning the room with alert intelligence. The night's events had sharpened both of their instincts, and neither had truly relaxed. She rubbed the dog's head gently, feeling the warmth and loyalty radiating from it. The dog had been more than just a companion during the ordeal. It had been a partner, a protector, and a silent guardian whose presence had made all the difference. After breakfast, she walked through her home carefully, checking every door and window once more. Though nothing had been stolen and the intruders had fled, caution was still necessary. She had learned over the years that vigilance was not a burden, but a responsibility. She had faced threats before, though never so directly, and she understood the importance of being prepared. Her dog followed her closely, stepping lightly beside her as if aware that every motion she made mattered. Their synchronization was seamless, a silent communication born of trust, experience, and loyalty. As the morning progressed, neighbors began to emerge, noticing the lingering tension in the street. Word of the attempted break-in had spread quickly. Some came to check on her, expressing concern and curiosity. They had assumed that she had been an easy target, but hearing the story of how she and her dog had handled the situation left them stunned. Their admiration was clear, not just for the courage she had shown, but for the intelligence and calm she had maintained under pressure. She accepted their thanks with quiet grace, knowing that actions more than words had made the difference. The authorities returned later that morning to take a more detailed statement. The officers had been impressed the night before, and their respect had only grown after seeing her calm and thorough recounting of events. She described how the intruders had approached, the strategies she had used to protect herself and her dog, and how the loyal companion had acted with precision. Every word she spoke reinforced a simple truth. Courage and preparedness could overcome brute force and arrogance. The officers noted the tools left behind by the intruders and reassured her that the gang would face legal consequences for their actions. While the authorities handled the aftermath, she reflected on the night's events. She thought about how easily assumptions can mislead people, how the gang had believed strength could be judged by appearances, and how wrong they had been. She had lived her life quietly, never flaunting her abilities, and yet that quiet strength had proven far more powerful than any expectation based on prejudice. Her dog had been an extension of her vigilance, a reminder that loyalty and intelligence could work together to create an almost unstoppable force. The day slowly moved forward, and with it came a sense of normalcy returning to her home. The streets were quiet, and the sunlight made the garden look more vibrant, highlighting the flowers and greenery she had nurtured. Her dog lay in the sun, muscles relaxed but eyes still watching. The events of the night were behind them, but the lessons remained clear. Preparation, courage, and awareness were invaluable, and loyalty was a strength that could not be measured by size or appearance alone. Later in the day, she took a long walk through the neighborhood, her dog at her side. Neighbors waved, their expressions now filled with respect and a touch of awe. Some stopped to ask questions, others simply nodded, acknowledging the quiet heroism they had witnessed. She smiled softly, appreciating the warmth but knowing that her actions had not been for recognition. They had been for survival, for the protection of her home and her companion, and for a clear understanding that courage and intelligence could prevail when challenged. The gang, meanwhile, faced the consequences of their actions. Reports came in over the following days that the authorities had tracked their retreat and identified several members. Arrests were made and news of the failed attempt spread through the neighborhood. The gang's assumptions about easy targets had been proven disastrously wrong, and the incident became a cautionary tale about underestimating others based on appearance or prejudice. The woman's strength and the dog's loyalty had left a mark not only on those who witnessed it, but on the perpetrators themselves. Despite the attention, she remained focused on the ordinary tasks of her life. She tended her garden, prepared meals, and went about her work with steady calm. The events of the night had not changed who she was, though they had reaffirmed her understanding of her own abilities and the value of the partnership with her dog. Every glance at the loyal companion reminded her that courage and vigilance were not just individual traits, but shared strengths, strengthened by trust and mutual understanding. As the week went on, she noticed subtle changes in the neighborhood. People seemed more cautious, more aware of the importance of security, and more respectful of her presence. The story of her courage and the dog's loyalty spread quietly, becoming part of the local narrative. Neighbors who had once overlooked her presence now viewed her with admiration, and a sense of community pride began to grow. She welcomed the attention but never let it define her. Her focus remained on living carefully, watching attentively, and maintaining the strength that had carried her through the night. In the evenings, she and her dog would sit on the porch together, watching the sunset. The bond between them had deepened, reinforced by the shared experience of danger and survival. The dog's presence was comforting, a reminder of loyalty, courage, and the instinctive understanding that had made the difference. She often reflected on the lessons learned, that assumptions based on appearances could be misleading, that intelligence and calmness were powerful tools, and that loyalty, when true, could shape outcomes in ways that no one could predict. The intruder's failure became a story of caution for the community. Parents spoke to their children about awareness and vigilance, neighbors shared tips for safety, and a quiet sense of empowerment spread. The woman's actions demonstrated that strength did not always come in obvious forms, that courage could be quiet, and that preparedness could prevent disaster. The dog, loyal and protective, became a symbol of steadfast support, showing that bravery and intelligence could be found in every form, from human to companion animal. As days turned into weeks, The woman returned fully to her routines, though her awareness had sharpened. She continued her work, tended her garden, and walked her dog with the same attention and care as before. The night of danger had passed, but the lessons remained vivid. She knew that vigilance and intelligence were ongoing practices, that courage was not a momentary act but a way of living, and that loyalty could create bonds that amplified strength in ways that were impossible to ignore. Her dog remained by her side constantly, a reminder of the events that had unfolded and the partnership that had saved them. They moved through their home and neighborhood with quiet confidence, a force neither expected nor easily measured. The incident had changed nothing in their daily routines, but had strengthened everything in terms of resilience, awareness, and trust. The woman understood clearly that strength was not always loud, visible, or aggressive. Sometimes it was calm, steady, and deeply rooted in loyalty and preparation. Neighbors often stopped to speak with her, offering gratitude and curiosity, and she shared advice on vigilance and safety in gentle, clear terms. She did not seek recognition, but accepted the respect with humility. Her focus was on living fully, protecting her home and maintaining the bond with her dog, whose loyalty had proven indispensable. The events of that night had affirmed a truth she had always known, that courage, intelligence, and loyalty, when combined, could overcome fear, chaos, and even the reckless confidence of those who sought to do harm. As the sun set each evening, she would sit with her dog on the porch, watching the light fade over the garden. Their bond was evident in every glance, every movement, and every shared moment of calm after the storm. The neighborhood, once unaware of the quiet strength in its midst, now carried the memory of what had happened. It was a story of resilience, of courage, and of the incredible loyalty that had protected both life and home. The woman knew that life would continue, that challenges could arise at any time, but she also knew the power she carried within herself and with her companion. She had faced danger directly and emerged with her strength intact. Her dog had proven that loyalty was a force that could shape outcomes, protect, and inspire. Together, they had turned a night of potential disaster into a story of triumph, teaching a lesson that would resonate far beyond the boundaries of their home. Looking back, she felt a deep sense of pride, not in the confrontation itself, but in the way she had remained calm, strategic, and aware. She had acted decisively, relied on her instincts, and trusted her loyal companion. The dog had responded with intelligence and courage, completing a partnership that had become legendary in their small community. What could have been a story of fear and loss had been transformed into one of empowerment, strength, and unwavering loyalty. The intruders were gone, the neighborhood safe, and the woman and her dog continued their lives with renewed confidence. Every day brought reminders of the night, subtle but powerful. A glance at the garden where the chaos had unfolded, the watchful eyes of the dog, the locks and windows that had kept them safe, and the memory of courage tested and proven. It was a lasting lesson about strength, awareness, and the power of loyalty, one that would guide them through whatever challenges lay ahead.